What's up, guys, and welcome to One Take. I'm Gil, and today we're talking about Raised by Wolves Season 2, Episode 8, the season finale, titled Happiness. With a title like that, you know everything's gonna go great this episode. This will be a full recap and review, so spoilers ahead. The episode opens with Campion using some berries to copy some of Vril's journal entries and burying the android in a makeshift grave. Then he runs when the Uber serpent flies overhead. Meanwhile, Father learns of Mother's plan to wear Grandmother's veil, and he's concerned, rightfully, as we later see. Hunter and Tempest bring the baby in for a medical inspection, and the machine detects mutations. She has webbing between her fingers, similar to the sea creature which fed the baby, perhaps causing the mutation, so the machine begins corrective surgery. Grandmother has her veil removed, and those eyes gave early Season 1 Mother vibes, with the uncanny valley staring ahead. The veil is placed on Mother, and things seem to be okay. She still sees Father as her partner, the children as her priority, and the serpent as her enemy, though you can already see from the way she speaks that her emotions are gone, and without emotion, she is no longer beholden to her caregiving program, and she can kill number 7. And she's just in time, because the serpent is closing in on Campion. Mother shows up to draw the serpent into space. It tries to feed, but finds her 6 openings closed after Sue's procedure. Mother uses her Necro Scream, and when she does, you see a strange pattern ripple across the sky, and the serpent falls back to Earth, nearly dead. A couple of thoughts. First, how great was this scene? The vocalized music gave it this really important feeling, like we are witnessing an event with major implications. And I thought the serpent reaching out to Mother before it died made me feel a little sympathy for it first. Ultimately, I believe the serpent is bad for humanity, but you have to wonder what its mind is like. If it's sentient, then it may truly love Mother and have feeling, but is just under the influence of the entity. That would make number 7 a pretty tragic figure. The pattern we see in the sky, we later learn that's the EMF, the electromagnetic field, which Mother just ripped a hole through. Then she rips out the serpent's brain, or at least enough of a chunk to kill it, and callously says, "What a shame, it must have been very intelligent." Campion confronts Mother. He knows that the serpent is her child, and it killed Vril. But Mother just wonders why Campion would choose to love a machine. This obviously makes for great drama in the confrontation between these two characters, but I also wonder if it's set up for where Campion could ultimately end up. The planet has generally been split into 2 factions, Mithraic and Atheists, but I've often thought Campion could one day try to lead a 3rd faction, which allows its members to believe as they please. They don't have to sign up for total non-belief or one specific faith. Another characteristic of this faction could be its treatment of androids. Campion seems to be unique in his belief that androids are sentient with as much of a soul as humans. This is likely something he can see which others can't, thanks to his pronounced empathy, which Mother and Father both remarked on last season. In the next scene, Mother mentions how Campion is being decontaminated after exposure to Vril's radiation, but says he'll be fine thanks to his immunity. I assume the same immunity which protected him from the space potatoes in Season 1. Mother tells Father she's going to keep the veil for now because removing it would expose her to grief, which could make her volatile. She also warns that there could be more boxes out there, like the one which turned Sue into a tree, and gives Father the memory card which Lucius confiscated from Marcus. She tells Father to make sure the children see it so they know what they're up against. Meanwhile, she'll hang out in the Tarantula for now and recommends Father get Grandmother's help with the children. Father finds Grandmother working on the hibernation system. Why? We'll find out a little later. Campion returns to their home, and I love Hunter's reaction. "We knew you'd make it, Camp." Imagine if your friend went missing while a giant flying dinosaur was hunting him. Then you reunite with your friend is alive, and your reaction is, "I knew you'd make it." Father plays the memory card for the children, but first he asks Vita to leave the room so she isn't scarred by the experience. The card plays. We see a box just like the one that Sue found. We hear music play. Remember, the box didn't open until Sue sang that Mithraic song. Someone extracts the seed from the box and, just like Sue, turns into a tree. So far, the 2 glimpses we've had of the ancient civilization have been terrifying in their own way. The first in how bizarre it looked, like an H.R. Geiger image, this one in its gruesome violence. And it is a bummer to think of Sue dying this way. By the way, something important in this hologram is that the process seems to be voluntary. It's not like Sue where she didn't know what would happen. This seemed like a planned ritual, the way everyone's standing around her, just like the first flashback in Season 1 where robed figures stood around a birthing chamber. And it all sort of makes sense. The people we see in these images are likely Mithraic, and back then, perhaps they worshipped the entity as soul. Working with the entity, they birthed the necromancers. I believe that's what we see in the first flashback. And it's strange to say that machines are born, but using Botanitech, they kind of can be. Where these ancient humans didn't know how to plug the right wires in and complete the right programming to build a necromancer, they may have known enough that, in combination with the entity's power and instruction, they could cultivate Botanitech and grow a necromancer. Along the same lines, the entity may have instructed them to sacrifice some humans as ingredients for Botanitech-grown trees that draw the planet's power. Elsewhere, somebody steals the Punisher helmet. We later learn this is Lucius. And Marcus meets with Paul, who explains a little of what's going on. The EMF blocked the entity from this part of the planet. That tree was its way of circumventing that, hardwiring into the planet. So, one of my theories about the serpent was that it represented almost a Wi-Fi booster, a way for the entity to penetrate the EMF. I was wrong, but you have to admit I was kind of close. It was just the tree that bypassed the EMF rather than the serpent. Anyway, the tree drawing power from the planet implies the signals coming from underground. So Marcus decides that he should head back underground. At night, a tree grows out of the serpent. Perhaps with the EMF damaged by Mother, the entity was able to get enough of a signal through to use ingredients from the serpent's remains to grow that tree. More of that great Botanitech. We see people celebrating the death of the serpent. If you listen closely, the only audible line was, "That was a huge deal," which made me laugh for some reason, like someone needs to have that explained to them. During the festivities, a firework blows a hole in the ground, and in that hole, Vita finds another relic. Grandmother quickly snatches it from her, warning that it's dangerous. That quickly teaches Father a lesson. If he hadn't sheltered Vita from watching the flashback, she would have known not to pick up the relic. Then Grandmother and Father share an awkward moment of android flirtation, and he basically tells her, "Hey, I know Mother might be a little whatever sometimes, but I'm very much devoted to her." We see it snowing suddenly as the temperature drops, and Mother warns Father that she damaged the EMF, and they are no longer protected from the entity's signal. Back home, Grandmother repairs the gaming system. And if someone could explain to me how this game works and why Campion calls it fun, that would be much appreciated. Clearly, this isn't just a game. Grandmother is up to something, and we will come back to that later. Meanwhile, Marcus gets to the temple above the pit so he can head back underground, but before he can, he is shot by Lucius, who then ties Marcus to the tree which grew out of the serpent, then nails his hands to it. Lucius quickly reveals that he is now under the entity's control, just like Marcus once was. The entity instructed Lucius to put the Punisher helmet on Marcus so he can die wearing it. The helmet is a relic just like the one which turned Sue into a tree. So, what will the helmet do to Marcus? We'll come back to that at the end of the episode. Elsewhere, Grandmother and Father talk. She introduces them to marine fungus, a food source which will be viable even if it gets so cold that the fruit trees die off. And she says something very important. She has always believed it is happiness, not knowledge, that is most important to a human being's everlasting life. Father says, ignorance is bliss, and she corrects him, not quite bliss, but key to survival. We'll talk about that in a bit. Watching from the tarantula, Mother sees Campion, and Campion notices that he's getting used to the acid water. But Mother sees this is a mutation like what happened to Tempest's baby. This is the beginning of the devolution which the old humans of this planet suffered. Mother grabs the veil, and in another moment straight out of a horror movie, it grows to encompass Mother's entire body until she's trapped. Grandmother moves her into the hibernation pod and finally gives a hint as to what's going on. Grandmother's mission is to ensure humanity's everlasting life, and she determined that the best way to do it is to devolve them, make them simpler, happier versions of themselves. But the end goal is not bliss, as Father puts it. She believes this is necessary for their survival. So I think happiness is just a means to an end. It keeps humans docile and out of trouble. It reminds me of something I've read about. There are many theories about why we, in real life, have not come into contact with extraterrestrial life. One theory is that there is no extraterrestrial life. Another is that they're just too far away. But another, more cynical theory is that any sufficiently intelligent life is destined to destroy itself. When life gets smart, life invents nuclear weapons or some other incredibly destructive force and eventually wipes itself out. Grandmother seems to subscribe to this theory, or at least in her calculation, it applies to the human race. So, to complete her mission of ensuring humanity's everlasting life, she had to strip them of their intelligence and prevent their self-destruction. So it would seem the devolution is not caused by the entity, but is somehow caused by Grandmother. And through what mechanism is she actually causing it? I suspect it is somehow triggered by her modified game. That's the only place where we've seen her directly interact with the children, and later she tries to spread the game to everyone else in the colony, I assume to spread the devolution. We did also see Grandmother feed them the marine fungus, but it seemed by that point, Campion's acid immunity was already beginning, so the process clearly had already started before they ate that food. Grandmother also says that once the humans return to the water, i.e. once they are devolved, the entity will return to its slumber. So it seems that the entity is only activated by the presence of humans, or maybe intelligent life in general. Once humans lose their intelligence, the entity deactivates. Which introduces another, simpler explanation for why Grandmother is devolving the humans. She may have calculated that the entity cannot be stopped. It will always try to destroy humanity or do whatever it's trying to do to humans. The only way to stop it is to make humans simpler and non-intelligent, so the entity is no longer interested in them. Perhaps because whatever the entity is trying to accomplish requires intelligent life. So once you lose that intelligence, it's no longer interested. Grandmother puts Mother in the sim and leaves. By the way, remember what happened the last time Mother was in a sim? She was visited by the entity and impregnated by it. So I wonder if next season, Mother and the entity will have another chat. And I wonder if they might even work together temporarily, because now they have a common enemy, Grandmother. As I already mentioned, Grandmother shares more of the games to be spread among the colony. She says they will help to shield their minds and protect them from the entity, which to me sounds like code for it will devolve them. It won't shield their minds, but essentially get rid of their minds, so the entity is no longer interested in them. Back at the tree, it seems Marcus is dead. Lucius removes the helmet, and Marcus's body floats above him. Hard to know what exactly is happening here, but I have a few thoughts. The serpent was killed, so the entity should now be looking for a plan B. Well, actually, the serpent may have been plan B, because in combination with the tree, the entity used the serpent to introduce a weaponized force into the EMF. With the EMF now punctured, it could be back to plan A. We don't know what it's trying to accomplish, but based on what it did to the serpent, it's clearly looking for some firepower. So I think Marcus could turn into Serpent 2.0, essentially another weaponized and powerful force. Maybe by having Marcus die while wearing the helmet, the entity is able to sort of take over Marcus's brain and body and turn him into a new soldier, a way for the entity to interact with the physical world rather than having to manipulate people like it did to Marcus, Paul, and now Lucius. And why Marcus? Maybe having previously eaten Mother's eyes, they had some lingering effects which make Marcus's body the right vessel for this procedure. Mother told Marcus earlier in the episode that he doesn't look well. that could be a sign of those lingering effects. The other possibility is that, like I said, we've seen that the entity doesn't take direct control of people. It controls people through manipulation. So Marcus may have just been a convenient target. Like Lucius himself said, it didn't take much convincing to get him to punish Marcus. So the entity just knew, if I want to manipulate somebody, Marcus and Paul, they're not going to listen to me anymore because I already had them sacrifice Sue. But Lucius is still a believer, so him I can't control. And who can I easily get him to kill? Well, he hates Marcus, so it was just an easy path of manipulation for the entity. And that's where we wrap up. Not surprisingly, we've finished the season with some questions answered and a lot of new ones asked, but I'm here for all of it. By the way, if you want to hear a longer discussion about Raised by Wolves Season 2 overall, plus some thoughts on where it could be heading in future seasons, make sure you're subscribed to the One Take podcast. The next episode will be posted this weekend, and it'll be all about Raised by Wolves. Click the card in the upper right corner to head over to that channel, or see the link in the description. You can also listen in audio form on any podcast app. You can also find those links in the description. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more. With that, thank you for watching, and see you on the next One Take.